What's up? Welcome in to Chicago Bears. Now, what is this? 7 in a row? 7 straight losses in a row? 7 disappointing Mondays in a fucking row. What are we going to do? I'm Harrison Graham, producer Cullen Brown, hanging out as always here on a Monday and as always pretty much every day. Shout out your city. Let us know where you guys are tuning in from. And Cullen, this feeling is all too familiar.
Yeah, it's become a regular staple of Bears Now and really kind of just watch the Chicago Bears. And listen, we had hope. This was kind of like the final, or at least it felt like it for me. The final just is, hey, maybe there could be some interesting, maybe there could be a little extra boost, maybe there's extra something to look out for here. And it just didn't happen, man. They came out so flat against the 49ers, 4 yards of total offense in the first half.
Yeah, I think that's the most disappointing part yesterday is, look, I get it. They've been a slow starting team all year. I don't expect some switch to just be flipped and all of a sudden they look like the 2000 Rams offense to start these games or something like that. But, like, where's the urgency? Like, I get it. Sometimes you just don't execute whatever, but, like, I'm not seeing that something extra. And I know that's hard to measure. You kind of just know it when you see it. Like, a good example right now, Colin, is watching the Lions on defense. So many guys are out, but the guys that are trotting out there are playing their ass off because they don't have a choice. If they don't play 100 miles per hour, they don't have the personnel. So they're kind of getting by grit and coaching right now. The Bears, sure, we've probably overvalued some of this talent, but I'm just not seeing the extra juice. The defense feels like they've completely folded. The offense showed some fight in the second half, but, like, it's too late. Like, I don't understand the inability to even get off to an okay start. I mean, you look up in these games, they're down within 5 minutes, like, every game. It's just, I don't know. I'm not trying to be negative again, but it's frustrating, man. It's really, really frustrating.
Yeah, and I mean, we were going into that game too. San Francisco wasn't looking great. Maybe you thought.
Thomas Brown boost. I mean, I would have thought a little more juice, with Eberflus gone, would just be natural. And I don't know if just giving up a touchdown on the opening drive just sucked that all away. But if that did, that's just a lack of mental fortitude. I mean, it really is.
And I mean, I was listening to a podcast that were talking about the Bears, and maybe the boost that they got was the initial firing of Shane Waldron, and that was the only boost that they were going to get.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe that's
I just thought that players, Jalen Johnson in particular, goes off on Eberflus and in the locker room after what happened at the end of the Detroit game. Rightfully so, to be honest. And to just turn around and you just get punked like that, to me, it makes me, like, challenge your credibility when you do that. So, I don't know. Well, I'm curious to see what happens next week. I mean, like, at this point, I'm just, like, fascinated to see what we see, because are we going to see the team that fought till the end against NFC North teams, at least, played hard, but ultimately got let down by coaching, or is this team just done now? I mean, it feels like, obviously, like, the season's over in terms of, like, any postseason hope, but, like, I mean, you still have young players. I mean, you'd like to get a couple wins here if possible, but they're going to be underdogs the rest of the way. So it's not looking exactly optimal at this point in time. All right, we see all super chats. Do want to thank a couple sponsors first, though. Starting with Game Time. If you want to go check out a Bears game, tickets are dropping. You can get in to go see Bears Lions for less than $200. I looked ahead, by the way, Cullen. You can see Bears Seahawks. I know it's the day after Christmas for like $80. So pretty good deal. Those prices could continue to drop, so keep an eye on that with Game Time. Want to go to a Blackhawks game, want to go to a Bulls game, Game Time is the place to go to get your tickets for any and all sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, anything that requires you to purchase a ticket. Check out Game Time today. When you create an account, use code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase only. Terms do apply there. Code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase only. We're also sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states, and there's 10 million users and counting. And during the holiday season, you can win up to 200 times your money on a single entry right now. depending on the type of entry that you do. Merry Picksmith is here thanks to Prize Picks, so check that out right now. I got a little two-play going right now. Also got to deal with Patrick Mahomes, more or less than half a passing yard. Obviously, you just take the more there. Pair that with Brock Purdy, who just cooked the Bears defense, so take the more on his passing. 5 to win $15, but again, you can win up to 200x your entries right now on certain entries. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use code CLNS. You're going to get a $50 bonus into your account when you play for just $5 initially if you're a new customer, so go check that out. Okay, DC Viper, we'll run through some super chats here. He says, trade Stevenson in the offseason. He has become a very toxic player and shows very little effort. I don't want another George Pickens type. Yeah, I really do think that this is on the Bears at this point. Like, he should have been benched weeks ago. Like, and I'm not even just saying for the end of the Washington game at this point. It's more so how he's responded. He's just not playing that well, but that happens. I can live with the guy going through a slump, young player. That happens. But the half-assed effort on some of these plays, there was a 4th and 1 where he's like the edge setter. It's just like a goal line formation, and he just stands back. Like, go in there and fucking lay the guy out and try to stop him short of the sticks. I think he should be. I would, at this point, you're completely out of it. Like, I kind of got it at the time. It's like, well, you're in a playoff hunt. You're trying to make that's over. I would make him inactive for a game and see how he responds. I still believe in the talent, but clearly the confidence isn't there. The effort comes and goes. I hear what you're saying. I kind of agree. I'm not quite ready to say trade him, but if there's not an attitude fix here, I think you may have to look at other options. Adam Downing, reset the staff, including polls, and draft a center. I mean, they got to upgrade at center. You know, I was kind of giving Coleman Shelton some love in recent weeks. I was like, he's played better, like no glaring big mistakes. And then Cullen, we saw early season Shelton yesterday. He got thrown to the ground like a rag doll, and I'm trying to remember who it was. It wasn't even like a star player. It was like...
Was it Malik Collins?
Yes!
Yeah.
He's like, he's fine.
Yeah.
He's nothing special, and he just depleted Coleman Shelton.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a total embarrassment. Again, it's not even on Coleman Shelton. It's like you keep trying to patchwork this position, and that's kind of what you get. So, I don't know. I mean, I would put him in the serviceable starting category. You have too many serviceable starting offensive linemen. Like, out of your 5, you can have 1 or 2 of those. You've got like 3 of those. I mean, you've got Coleman Shelton. Matt Pryor is a backup that you're, and a good one, but a backup that you're having to start because Nate Davis was a train wreck. Ryan Bates, who you trade for, unavailable the entire season, basically. Braxton Jones, he looks the part at times, but I would put him slightly above serviceable. Like, is he a starting left tackle in the NFL? Yes, there's 32 of those. But, like, I would say he's closer to 32 than 1.
Absolutely.
I'd say he's 20? And listen, you found him in the 5th round. Like, that's a good find. But, like, that should be like your 4th best starter, not your 2nd or 3rd. And that's what he's been.
And it's also, the positional value of that, too. Like, left tackle,
if that was your right tackle,
right,
you could live with that more.
100%. I mean, we've seen it with the 49ers for years. I mean, Trent Williams has been, now granted, Trent Williams is the best left tackle of football. I'm not trying to compare anybody to him. But, I mean, they nail that position. How long have the 49ers had just kind of subpar offensive line play outside of him? And really, it hasn't been that much of an issue comparatively in terms of running their offense and everything.
Now, it helps when you have Kyle Shanahan. You can scheme things and work around weaknesses. But it's a great point. Like, if Braxton Jones was your right tackle, honestly, if you could flip your tackles, like, Darnell Wright's not a star, but I think he's played pretty well, especially lately. Like, you'd feel better. But someone asked me about that the other day. Hey, well, why not just put Darnell Wright at left tackle? Because if that doesn't work, then you may have 0 good offensive linemen. Like, I'm terrified to move Darnell Wright, Cullen, because you at least feel good about him at right tackle. Like, the rest of your line, you could argue, could at least be discussed of needing an upgrade.
Absolutely. I mean, and you've already kind of shuffled, offensive line is like the one position group, I would say more than any other position group that needs continuity. Mm-hmm. And the fact that Darnell Wright's been this constant, you don't remove that needing the continuity that you need from that offensive line. And to be honest, the Bears, they need to get, honestly, a pure center. I'm tired of these kind of like guys that can play multiple positions. Again, in spots, for a game or two, that's fine. But Ryan Bates is kind of like a hybrid, right? Like a guard center. Coleman Shelton, yes, he's a pure center. He's not great. I think personally for me,
they tried it with Lucas Patrick, guard center. Like if you're a guard and a center, you're probably just a backup.
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of what it is.
And for the record, because I know people might ask this, there's no really pure centers that are having first-round grades, at least from what I've seen. Yeah. Harry, maybe you could say different. So that's probably something you invest in a day 2 pick. That should 100% be a target for the Bears. I mean, it's just been
that, or I don't know who it is, whoever the best free agent center is, just overpay. Like it's okay. Like sometimes you just have to do it. Like that's what the situation calls for. So.
Maybe, but I mean, Connor Williams was thought, and again, he's one of those hybrids, and Seattle paid him a bunch of money, and he's no longer on the team. Granted, he retired early, but he wasn't playing that well soon to be. So be careful, overpaying. I mean, obviously, Nate Davis experiment, all that stuff, but I just think the Bears need to go target in the draft.
Yeah.
For a guy.
I mean, look, if someone emerges as like a day 2 pick, like I'm with you. Every year their center play sucks. I mean, it's like you would think eventually you're just like, well, even if I have to overpay, whatever I have to do, I'm going to upgrade this position. And they just haven't done it. And I know people are going to ask, what about Tevin? What about Tevin? I like Tevin, but he's hurt all the time, and he's an impending free agent. So what do you do? I mean, starting guards make a lot of money now. Like, you're going to give him $15 million a year? That might be what it takes. And that's a guy who I think he's only missed 1 or 2 full games, but he's left about 5 early. So, like, when you look at his total snaps, it's probably going to end up being he played like 12 games this year. And that's kind of what he's been. He gives you 12 games. He's pretty good in those 12, but there's 17 games. Like, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, and then how many of those games, like you said, has he left early and just not played? It's just...
I like Tevin. He's a good player, but you can't trust him to be available.
The best ability is availability.
Twinquist, how do you fire a GM who isn't allowed to make his owner's decisions? He wanted Flus gone at the end of last season. I just don't even know if we know that anymore. Here's part of the problem, Twinquist, the secrecy, and I get teams don't want how they do things out in the public, at least everything. We don't even know what's true anymore. Did polls solely pick him initially? I think he had the final say, but he already had 3 finalists. Did he feel comfortable expanding that search at that point? I don't know. Did he want to bring him back last year? Reporting forever was yes. New report says no. I don't know what's true. I'm not even full anti-polls. We're going to do a polls segment coming up. I'm just proposing the idea, do you fire him? Just to say, you know what? We're going to, we want to have the best head coach options available. And some of these high-level guys might be like, well, I don't trust this GM situation because he's been there for 3 years. I'd rather start fresh with someone I know, etc. So that could be a real thing. And B, and we're going to talk about this too, Colin, he's in the final year of his contract coming up. So you have 2 options. You extend him and line him up contract-wise with the new coach, or you fire him. I don't think you can just play that year out. You hire a coach and then fire a GM 1 year in, that's a disaster. You can't go that route.
100%. And, I mean, we've talked about the press conference that him and Kevin Warren had kind of at length, and, the body language from Ryan Poles was not great.
No.
If you're, say a Mike Vrabel or Ben Johnson or whomever your top candidate is, and you start the interview process and you don't even necessarily know who's leading the charge per se, like it's not a great look. Like, imagine you go in for a job interview and you have multiple people in front of you. And again, it's okay to have that, right? If you're, interviewing 2-on-1, 3-on-1, whatever it is. But if you don't know who the lead man is, I mean, that's kind of, or woman for that matter, it's confusing to the brain, and you're just kind of sitting there being like, so if you guys can't even figure this out for somebody you're interviewing, like, what's it like behind the scenes?
Yeah. I think Kevin Warren's in charge. I think that's becoming more and more clear. I don't have any idea if that's a good thing or not. He's not a football guy. He's a business guy. I don't know. And that's why with the polls thing, and people might say, well, why not just get rid of Kevin Warren? It's like, they're not going to do that. The reason I'm bringing up polls is because that's something that I think there's at least a chance could happen, whether we want it to or not. Warren, for better or worse, is not going anywhere. He's in charge of the stadium project. He does a lot of the stuff the McCaskies don't want to do. Like, he's not leaving. Like, he will be here for a while. So I'm just looking at things like, okay, if you want Mike Vrabel, and Mike Vrabel, it's well documented that when they changed GMs and traded A.J. Brown, he firmly disagreed with it. That pissed him off. Like, Vrabel might want some personnel control. And that might mean you have to change GMs. Like, are you willing to do that to get the coach you want? I'm not saying you should just let the coach make all the demands, but if it means you get the best coach or one of the best coaches on the market, like, I'm willing to do more than I would have done in the past if I'm running the Bears. So we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. Eduardo, I'm going through personnel anguish after buying 50-yard line tickets to the game yesterday. Wow. That sucks, dude. I got to be honest. Man. I don't know what else to say. I hope you use Game Time to get those tickets, but yeah, that was an awful product you witnessed yesterday. Thanks for tuning in, Eduardo. Mr. Cub, boy, do I have some great news for you. We can break the streak of disappointing Mondays by having a disappointing Tuesday. That's Spin Zone, baby. Bears, Vikings, Monday Night Football next week. Yep, it'll be Tuesday next week. Can't wait. Yeah. We'll be there. Can't wait.
Has the line already come out for that game? I'm assuming it has, but
it's in Minnesota. I'm gonna guess it's like, I don't know, 9.5.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great.
Let's see.
Good Lord.
Doubleheader Monday night that night. Thank God. So maybe some eyeballs will just be on the other game. It is the early line 6.5.
That feels low.
That feels like a Vikings hammer. I know they played the Vikings close last time. Divisional game, those tend to be closer, but you're going to have to play a lot better than you did yesterday. That's for damn sure.
I mean, if Darnold played like he did against the Falcons against the Bears,
he looked like the MVP against the Falcons.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right, refrigerator. Will George McCaskey and Kevin Warren clean house this offseason? I don't think George is that involved. I think that's part of the Warren thing, too, is like they just don't want to do that much anymore. That's the big question. Warren has come out and said Ryan's the GM. I think he's going to keep Poles calling, and here's why. I think one, I think he probably likes working with him. But two, I think he knows with Poles, like, he's kind of got him in a stranglehold. Like, he's already, like, established himself, like, I am the alpha in this like, this is my show. I'm running this team. And Poles, what's he going to do? I mean, he could resign, but, like, I think Kevin Warren has seized power of this situation, whereas if you fire Poles and, bring in a certain GM, they may not be willing to do that. So I think Poles is staying. I think that's a big reason for it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, it could have honestly, and I'm not saying this did happen or I have any knowledge of this happening, but it could have been simply, when Kevin Warren was brought in, he was like, all right, listen, my job is to handle the stadium, kind of behind the scenes work, and I'll let Ryan Poles do his thing. Well, now you see, again, what's all transpired with Eberflus, with Waldron, and some of the decisions Poles has made, and now Warren's kind of forced to be kind of that main lead guy.
Yeah, so. I think it's easy to be like low-hanging fruit Kevin Warren, and I've done some of it as well, like, oh, he tried to cancel the Big Ten season, all this stuff, yada, yada, yada. I'll say this. If I was the president of a football team and I watched this team just lose on Thanksgiving in embarrassing fashion, like, I'd probably take control of the situation as well. Now, from an outsider, it makes me nervous because I think a football guy should be running your football search and your football decisions. But I also can't blame the guy. It's like, this is an embarrassment. Like, I gotta use my power here and take command of this situation because the people that were in charge weren't getting the job done. So it's just a bad situation, man. Like, it really, really is. Yeah, I don't know. Lord Vader, this was the healthiest 49ers team since the start of the year. Not same team Packers had their starting safety corner and QB back. Well, the quarterback played against the Bills the week before, and they got hammered. Also, Christian McCaffrey was available the 2 games before. He, at least part of the Buffalo game, not available here. Jordan Mason, not available here. Ayuk's still out.
Debo still hasn't looked the same all year.
Trent Williams and Nick Bosa were still out.
Yep.
Like, did they get? They might have gotten like 2 guys back. Like,
listen,
I get they've been injured all year, but let's not act like they went from let's just put it in Madden terms, 78 overall roster against the Bills and Packers to an 89 against the Bears. Like, maybe they went from a 78 to a 79 or 80. By the end of the game, Colin, they're on like their 5th running back. I mean,
seriously.
It's like Patrick Taylor?
Jawan Jennings was cooking. And again, he's had a nice year, but it's like, in terms of like the skill weapons, I mean, Pearsall was having a rough day. You mentioned Ayuk, Debo's kind of been pedestrian. Like, it's just, Shanahan did a masterful coaching job. Yes, Purdy executed really well.
They lost their backup left guard in the first quarter.
Like, there's no excuse.
Yeah, like, guys, the Bears got fucking punked. Like, Caleb Williams said it after the game. He's like, I don't know what Thomas Brown said to y'all, but we got our ass kicked. There's no way around it. Like, it is what it is. And, yeah, I mean, well, I don't think there's really anything to, kind of just nip at here. Like, they just got destroyed. And there's really no excuse for that. Like, I think they were a 3.5-point dog at kickoff. I mean, ridiculous. Vrabel sucked in the draft. I'd have to go back and look. I know their teams weren't quite as good at the end there. I don't know how much power he did or didn't have, but
well, it ultimately wasn't towards the end, right? Because that's kind of why they kind of forced him out, because they wanted to go in a different direction. Like, Vrabel, I'm sure, had input, obviously, in the kind of team that he wanted to, but I wouldn't say he was just like a Bill Belichick, just running everything. So
the A.J. Brown trade,
that one's bad.
Well, that wasn't him, though.
No, it wasn't. I'm just saying it was a bad.
When they did that set them back. Tannehill wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And you've seen it with 2 quarterbacks now, A.J. Brown's impact. Tannehill with A.J. Brown, honestly, fringe top 10, top 12 guy. Without him, fringe starter. Jalen Hurts without A.J. Brown, I'd say slightly above fringe starter, but with him, top 10 or 12 guy. So he was firmly against that. Did not like it. They drafted Treylon Burks with that first rounder they got. He was a bust. So, Tannehill wasn't the same player. Their offensive line started to age. So, listen, I don't think Vrabel's the perfect guy, but the idea of him is growing on me because he's done the job before. He's a no-nonsense guy. You need, like, a completely different voice in that building than you've had. Like, people all the time are like, Ditka. Well, he's probably the closest thing to Ditka that's available. Unless you want to say Belichick, but he might be the North Carolina coach by tomorrow. So, and I just don't think I don't want to go that route anyway because he's 72.
And the only thing, and I'll just last say it, and again, Vrabel's not a perfect team, maybe a double and all that. That just puts a lot of pressure on the Bears to not only hire him, but also get an offensive coordinator that works with him. And
it's true, and that's why Caleb. That's why I've been slightly hesitant on him, but I just think this locker room, Colin, is like so nonchalant at this point. And so just
like they need it.
They just need it, I think.
Yeah.
Like, and if Ben Johnson can't provide that part of it, you may not be able to hire him because, sure, the offense could be fun and creative and all this stuff, but at least with Vrabel, you're going to be a tough football team, at least in theory. Dennis, give us a full offseason plan at this point. Might do a full video on that. Definitely will at the end of the season, but might do a perfect off-season plan video coming up. That's one we always do anyway. But gotta think that out a little bit. But that's it's definitely something that we'll try to do. Alex, Vrabel or Flores? This team needs discipline. If you told me Flores could connect with Caleb, I'd be on board. That's the big question there, because I know he can coach. He can. I mean, the Vikings objectively have less talent than the Bears defensively, and they are a far better defense. I think he could do wonders with this defense, especially if you add a couple more pieces. It's just, can he connect with the quarterback? Can he bring in the right offensive coordinator for the quarterback? If he can check those 2 boxes, I'm open-minded to it because he does check the box of just tone setter, which this organization desperately needs. But if him and Caleb can't get along, it's kind of a non-starter for me because then you're just back in the quarterback black hole that you've been in forever. So, I don't think you run a search solely around Caleb, but if you ask the guy straight up, what do you think about Caleb Williams? And he's like, yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I don't think you can hire that guy. You just took this guy number 1 overall. You can't punt a year later. Like, you just can't do it. So, That would be my big question for Flores.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, ultimately, Flores, I don't know if I love him as a head coach. I really don't. Was he overly successful in Miami? And again, I get
He's
him.
19 and 18. I think he was better than most of the Belichick spinoffs. Remember that first year, the organization wanted to tank, and he was like, no. Remember, tank for Tua.
Right.
And they won 5 out of their last 7 games with no players.
The infamous Ryan Fitzpatrick year.
Yeah, so I think he can do it, but he will rub some players the wrong way. But I would also argue, again, maybe the Bears need someone like that.
Yep.
Some uncomfortableness. But if the quarterback thing doesn't mesh, I don't know. That's a little tougher to sell. Sell the team, George, if only. That would be nice. Jeeping, draft the middle linebacker in the second round. Edmunds is trash. I do kind of agree. Edmunds is not that good. I don't know if I'd go linebacker second round.
No.
I think I would try to – I think realistically you probably play one more year out with Tremaine because then the year after you can get out of the final year of the contract for very little money. But, yeah, that's been a disappointing signing, no question. Don Burr, we're taking the North and never giving it back. The Lions might be. Ryan Poles infamously at this point said that in his introductory presser, and they've taken 4th place in the North and never given it back. Josh Pike, Bears' best non-special teams player this season. God, that's a good question.
Best non-special teams player. Shout out to Torrey Taylor. I can't say it's Caleb. Swift had a stretch.
Caleb's the most promising.
Yeah.
But yeah, Swift has had a weird year. Started terribly. He's not been good for the last month. Middle of the year, he was good.
Sweat's had a down year. I mean, Javon Dexter's had a better year.
Even Sweat, even DJ, he's picked it up, but he's worse than last year. I mean,
Jalen Johnson's had a down year.
Yeah, I mean, I still think Jalen's been good, but not as good as last year.
I like Kyler Gordon, but is he the best non-special?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Jalen's still better, I would say.
Right.
Is it Darnell Wright? I don't know.
It's honestly a good question.
I mean, I think the fact that there aren't clear answers to this question is a problem. Now, the question is that on polls or is that on coaching for not developing? Combination of both? Players themselves? At some point, this is the NFL. You're a paid professional. You need to be more demanding of yourself. But Andy says it's actually Caleb. It honestly might be. And he's been up and down.
I've liked TJ Edwards this year, but even then, he's not
He was better last year. He's been good this year, but he's better last year. Dexter, better this year, but best non-special teams player?
Byard's been okay.
Was it Brisker before he got injured?
Seriously.
I mean, it's kind of crazy. Brisker has not played in 10 weeks. He's eligible to come off IR, by the way. I wonder if we get anything on that this week. That'll be telling, because clearly he hated Eberflus.
He did.
Terrell Smith. He should be playing over Tyreek.
I mean, that's honestly a really good question.
I have no idea. Best non-special team. It's probably one of these guys who have still had a down year.
Yeah. But Jalen Johnson, I would still pick as probably
your best pure player.
Right.
Yeah.
That's sad though. Holy.
Yeah, because Jalen was better last year. Still a good player.
People are saying Roma Dunze. Roma Dunze was nowhere to be found at the beginning of the year. Granted, he's come on late. He obviously had a really good game Sunday.
I think him and Caleb are more in the you can see it. These guys have a chance to be really good players, but are they your best pure players right now? I think that's a stretch.
Roshan Johnson. I mean, seriously,
I'll put it this way: is there a single Pro Bowler on this team? And the Pro Bowl is watered down.
In the NFC too,
who's a Pro Bowler on this team?
Maybe Jalen, and even then, that would be on reputation more than actual play.
Mercedes Lewis. Torrey Taylor might be a Pro Bowler. That's a good point.
Well,
we're talking non-special
teams. Exactly. I mean, that's
your best. This is sad. The best player on your team, relative to his position, is probably Torrey Taylor, your punter. Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, he's been booming all year. Like I said, I like Kyler Gordon. I still wouldn't have him above where Jalen's playing, but Jalen's play is down.
Yeah.
So it's
The point is, it's not. When a majority of your players aren't having, and you're not going to have the best year of your career every year, but when the majority of your key players are having down years, that's a big problem. That right there is the difference in being a 4 or an 8-win team.
I honestly think it is Darnell Wright. Like, if I had to pick
Darnell had like a 2 or 3 game stretch where he didn't play that well early in the year, but then remember, he popped on the injury report in the back, and you're like,
since then,
that kind of makes sense. And then since then, he's been pretty solid, honestly. Yeah. Like, I do think it's Darnell Wright, which that's promising. He took him in the top 10, so that's something, but man.
I mean,
this is a great question by Josh.
I mean, dude, like, would you argue Darnell Wright should be a Pro Bowler? Like, is anyone stomping on the table?
Still probably not, yeah. I mean, I think he's been a good player, but Pro Bowl? Probably not.
This is very depressing, but really good.
That's the season in a nutshell, right? Michael.
What free agents would you go for in the offseason?
Trey Smith. I think Ryan Kelly at center is available.
Zach Martin just went on IR for the rest of the year. Like,
he might just be done.
He might be.
He also feels like a Cowboy, or he's either Dallas or retire. I don't think he's going the Tyron Smith route where he goes somewhere else.
I thought that about Jason Witten back in the day too, and then Witten played for the Raiders for a year.
You never know.
I could see him just playing.
He's had a lot of injuries this year.
I don't know if the Bears would or should want him, because you need to build continuity on that offensive line.
I'd give him a 1-year deal. You know, it'd be an upgrade, but yeah, you'd rather go Trey Smith or someone else. But Trey Smith would be my top guy. Someone says we need a running back. Swift is not the answer. I don't disagree that you could upgrade there, but you're not spending on one in free agency.
I feel like Swift, for what he is as a running back, like, he's clearly not like a
He's not a Saquon.
No, he's not. He's not a 3-down, 20-plus touches every single week kind of guy. However, they should arguably upgrade at where Roschon is and have that bruiser in between tackles guy to give Swift a little bit of.
They really liked Roschon coming out, and part of it's been he's had some injuries. He's had a concussion in each of his 2 seasons. If he was 20% better than what he's been, I think we'd feel a lot better about the 1-2 punch, because they'd be giving Roschon more carries. Yeah, I think where this is going with Swift is his deal was a 2+1.
Mm-hmm. They'll
probably just cut him after next year. Like, he'll be on the team next year, and then they'll probably just cut him. I think for what he is, he's kind of like a streaky shooter in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Like, he has some games where like, whoa, like he was a big difference maker. But like, we'll look back at the end of the year, 17 games. It'll probably be like 5 bad games, 5 awesome games, and 7 where he was just fine.
Yeah. He is a finesse running back at the end of the day.
Yeah.
He can help you in the passing game in terms of, catch the ball.
If Roschon was giving this team more, I think you'd feel better about Swift, because it'd be more of a split role.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If you upgrade that role and he was getting, say, 10 to 15, whereas sometimes he's getting more than that.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's great.
Yeah. Appreciate all the questions. Wasim, I say draft trenches exclusively this year. I would expect heavy investment in the trenches. I can't blanket statement say they're going to draft all offensive and defensive linemen, but I would think that's going to be an emphasis this offseason. Alex, no longer getting my expectations up with the Bears. Don't blame you. Yeah, look, I'm always going to have slight hope, but it's fading. It's hard to trust who's running this organization. So we'll see. The first step is figuring out the coach. That's really it, and then you go from there. So a few weeks here, and then we'll see how it all goes. All right, if you have more questions, fire away. We'll do a full mailbag segment, #Bears or Super Chat, to get your questions answered here on the show. Brad Biggs dropped some nuggets on the Bears coaching search as it's gotten underway a little bit, some research happening, so wanted to dive into that. We'll get to that off the top here. And then, should Ryan Poles be fired? I think it's a discussion that is at least worth having at this point. We'll dive into that as well. So lots to get to here on Chicago Bears Now. Let's go ahead and dive on in. On today's episode of Chicago Bears Now, Chicago Tribune's Brad Biggs Dropped some nuggets about the early stages of the Bears coaching search. Kind of wanted to dive into that and just kind of see some trends early on here, kind of explore what some of these news and notes could mean for the coaching search. My name is Harrison Graham. You are watching Bears Now. We're trying to get to 111,000 subs. We are knocking on the door right freaking there. Your guys' support has been amazing. You lose 7 straight games. You guys keep showing up, watching my videos. Our videos, I should say. Producer Colin crushing it as well. So please continue to support. We appreciate it. We're here every single day. Go live 3 times per week. Okay, Brad Biggs report. Let's dive into it. Number 1, he claims that the Bears are ready to pay up for a head coach and a coaching staff. Here's what Biggsy had to say. Quote, 2 sources said a plus here is Warren likely will have the green light to spend as necessary to make the right hires, and that's plural because head coach is only as good as his assistants. And I think in today's NFL, there are rare exceptions, but you have to pay big to win big. And I'm talking about not just with, you have a salary cap with your roster, so you have to kind of work around that, but there's no cap on the coach. You could pay your head coach $50 million a year if you wanted to. Now, teams don't do that, but the high pay-in coaches, they make 15 plus. Chargers, who have been cheap forever, they said, you know what, we're tired of this. No more Anthony Lynn's, no more Brandon Staley's. We're going to give Harbaugh 17 a year. That's what the Bears need to do. Now, unfortunately, I don't see a Harbaugh out there. I like a Mike Vrabel. Maybe Ben Johnson costs that much and is in that range. But if you're serious, if you want to show your fan base we are willing to do whatever it takes to get the best possible coach, then go give a guy $17 million per year, because that is what it is going to cost to ideally and hopefully get this thing turned around. And like Big said as well, like, it's not just the head coach. Like, if you want to bring in high-level coordinators, they got to make $2+ million per year. Like, that's just what it is. So we'll see if they're willing to do that. Biggs is reporting that he's being told that is the case. I'll believe it when I see it, but no more Matt Eberfluses. No more, 10th best coordinators on defense. Like, get a high-level coach who's either done it before or someone that everybody wants and believes is going to be the next big thing. All right, number 2. I think we kind of already knew this, but it's even more clear. Kevin Warren's in charge. If you watched that presser last week, after they announced Matt Eberflus' firing and just steps they were going to take with the coaching search, yada, 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 it was obvious he's in charge. But this is just more evidence from Biggs, who said, quote, Warren made it clear, at least behind the scenes, that he'll be leading the charge to hire the next coach. Ryan Poles will be the point man in the operation, but Warren has all the juice, and he made sure everyone is aware. So Kevin Warren has grabbed this situation by the balls and said, I'm running the show. Again, the presser showed that. We all saw that. And I'm kind of conflicted because on one hand, I'm like, if I was a team president and I saw my head coach just fumbling the bag every single week, and I saw players that my GM brought in, some hit, some miss, some players regress, I might hijack the situation as well and just say, you know what, enough is enough. I'm taking over. But on the other hand, he's not a football guy, does give me some pause. I do have this question, and we heard Warren use the phrase in the presser, and Biggs is using it again here. What does point man mean? Like, if Warren's in charge, what does point man mean? Does that mean, like, he's coming up with, like, the interview questions? Like, he's in charge of the interviews? Because based on the press conference, it kind of feels like Kevin Warren is the point man. So I'm not really sure what to make of that. I would love, if we hear from Warren again and he takes questions, I hope someone asks him, hey, when you say Ryan Poles is the point man, can you explain to us what that means? Because it kind of feels like a vague statement of, he's the point man, kind of be like, he's the GM. It's his show. But it's pretty clearly Kevin Warren's show, which, again, as I kind of wrap up this thought, is he isn't a football guy. He's a business guy. I understand being hesitant to trust Ryan Poles because, whether he had full autonomy or not, he clearly liked Matt Eberflus. But Warren being in charge, it makes me nervous. Like, non-football people making football decisions, hiring the head coach, it makes me nervous. So, for better or worse, I hope Ryan Poles has a big say in this because he is the GM. He is the number one football guy you have in this operation. But, man, I just – you feel like – the chances of this going well are less likely than it is of going well, A, given the Bears' history, and B, this just feels like a massive unknown with Kevin Warren in charge. Do you guys trust Kevin Warren? Type T for trust, D for don't. I don't see how you could. And it's not even anything that he's done right or wrong since joining the Bears. It's just what evidence do we have? The biggest thing he's been in charge of is to get the stadium going. Well, where's the start of the stadium building? They can't even finalize a site. I get it, Chicago politics, all that stuff. It's not easy. Maybe just go to Arlington Heights, the property that you own, and start building there. Just an idea. So, I don't see how you could say you trust Kevin Warren at this point in time. You could always trust Game Time, as they are the place to go to get yourself tickets to a sporting event, a concert, a comedy show, or anything else that requires purchasing a ticket online, which is pretty much all events these days. Get started, create an account, use promo code ChatSports to get $20 off your first purchase. Only terms do apply there. Do you want to go to a Bears game down the stretch? Tickets are starting to drop because the Bears have lost a lot of games here. If you want to go check out the Blackhawks, the Bulls, if you live in a different city, your sporting team's there, you can get tickets, concerts, comedy shows. My wife and I went to a comedy show a couple of weeks ago and had a blast. Got our tickets with Game Time. Really good night out. Dropped the toddler off at Grandma and Grandpa's house and had ourselves a time. So I recommend you do that this holiday season. If you're getting tickets as a holiday gift to an event for someone else, Game Time is the place to do it. Views from the seats. Use the feature Game Time Picks. It's going to help you narrow down your search and kind of give you price points in the venue to figure out, hey, these tickets are in my budget, these aren't. It's awesome. Game Time is the place to go. $20 off, first purchase only with code ChatSports. Terms do apply. What time is it? It's game time. Okay, lastly here from Brad Biggs. Research has already begun, which, again, that shouldn't be surprising. The second you fire Matt Eberflus, within 3 days, I would imagine you're starting to do some background work on some potential candidates. Here's what Biggs reported as well. He said, multiple sources indicate the Bears have already started talking to people behind the scenes, laying the groundwork for future discussions with candidates that they want to be part of this process. So clearly they're doing their research. They're figuring out as much info as they can on all candidates that they want to talk to. And I think the Bears need to check 3 boxes. And if you can check these 3 boxes, you hire that coach. 1, a culture builder. Now, and 1 and 2 kind of tie together, but with 1, when I think culture builder, based on who's available, I think of a couple guys. 1, Mike Vrabel. 2, Aaron Glenn, which I don't love that idea, but I think from a culture builder standpoint, he probably checks that box more than Ben Johnson based on what we know. And 3, Brian Flores. Now, that's a wild card too. Can he connect with the quarterback? That's all fair game. 2, proven winner. Now, I don't think that has to be a guy who's been a head coach. It'd be nice if it was. Vrabel would check that box as well. AFC Championship game, won the AFC South with Ryan Tannehill. Caleb Williams more talented, all that stuff. But I think it could be a coordinator on a team who's won a lot, like a Ben Johnson. Obviously, they tried that with Matt Nagy. Did not work that well. The difference, Ben Johnson has called plays for 3 years. Matt Nagy called plays for 3 games. I don't think it's apples to apples, but a guy who's been around winning and been a part of that winning, not just along for the ride. And then 3, it's got to be someone who's a strong believer in Caleb Williams. And again, I don't think you conduct this search solely because of Caleb. But that's got to be a big part of the pie, right? Whatever the pie chart is, percentages, he's a big chunk. I would say the first 2 are more important, but he is the player on the roster that you are bringing up in these interviews, right? You're not saying, hey, what do you think of Tremaine Edmunds? No, you're talking about Caleb fucking Williams. Do you like him as a talent? What did you think about him coming out? How did you like his tape this year in his rookie season? What type of offense would you implement if it's a defensive guy? What type of coordinators? Give us some names that you would like to bring in here to potentially coach him. What type of scheme? Like, that all matters. Do you think you can mesh with his personality? Like, these are things that you have to get checked off. So those are the 3 boxes for me. Culture builder, proven winner, Caleb believer. If you check those boxes, I'm in. That's what I want out of my next head coach if I'm the Chicago Bears. So with that being said, I think I'm starting to lean toward Vrabel. Now, he checks the first 2 boxes. I have no idea what he thinks about Caleb Williams. I would think he would at least think he's a talented guy. But I've been on the Ben Johnson train. We don't know, but I do think it's interesting that when people talk about rah-rah, culture builder, command the room guy, people in NFL circles don't hesitate to mention Aaron Glenn, the other coordinator there. When you hear Ben Johnson, you typically hear more of like, yeah, creative, good play designer, can coach quarterbacks, which I like with Caleb, but he's not exactly like top-level leader guy. Now, again, we don't know if he is that or not, but if you don't feel good about that, that's a tough sell because how many – he's the next Shanahan guy has just flopped as a head coach. It happens all the time. So I think he's got to check the box of culture type of guy, and it's an overused phrase. I don't even like using it, but the Bears' culture sucks. So they need someone who can grab the bull by the horns and say, we're going to fucking do it like this or you're not going to do it here at all. Because these players are just way too comfortable with losing. And I'm not saying they like it, but at some point you need someone who just refuses to accept this anymore. And is Ben Johnson that? I don't know. I think Mike Vrabel is. So I think he, at this exact moment, might be my top guy. Who do you want as the next Bears head coach? Drop a name in the comments. Do you want Ben Johnson? Do you want Mike Vrabel? Do you want someone else? Do you still want Thomas Brown? One game in, doesn't look so good. Drop a name down below on who you want as the next Bears head coach. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We will continue to monitor everything surrounding this search. I saw a report of a few names being mentioned as some of the Bears' top targets, so we'll certainly dive into that on a future episode as well. My name is Harrison Graham. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and we will see you next time here on Bears Now. Super chat here from Sitch Lover. Poles is too emotional to be a good GM. No results. Yeah, I'm conflicted on that because I want my GM to care about the players he brings in, but I also want my GM to understand this is a harsh business. He probably kept Velus Jones too long, right? He didn't want to be wrong on that. And after a good preseason, he kept him. What does he do? Fumbles the opening kickoff. They get nothing for him when they could have gotten a draft pick based on what we saw in Hard Knocks. Maybe it was only like a 7th, but still. There's been other examples where he's pivoted quickly. Trade for Claypool, he got rid of him pretty fast, despite giving up a second-round pick for him. So
should have gave up Nate Davis quicker than he did.
Yeah, Nate Davis kept too long. So, like, it's been mixed results. It's like, I'm okay with my GM missing. He's going to miss, but what does he do to fix that situation? Like, with Nate Davis, I guess the hedging was having Ryan Bates. Well, he's been unavailable, so you've had to turn to Matt Pryor, who's been fine, but he's a career backup for a reason. So it's a fair point to make, Sitch Lover.
Yeah, and I mean, anytime you have any NFL GM, there's some level of ego, right? Where it's your team, you're building it, you're constructing it, the contracts you give out, the trades you make, the draft picks, all of that, right? But the ability, like you said, Harry, to be able to move off it, admit when you're wrong, look to improve this roster, and also, be open to hearing other outside opinions. Now, I'm not saying like you should listen to somebody else and have them make their opinions for you, but at the same time, I mean, with Ryan Poles, it just feels like at times he just doesn't seem to want to let go of certain decisions he's made. And we just kind of highlighted some of them for you, and that could ultimately be his downfall. Like keeping Matt Eberflus as long as he did, I mean, that's, if nothing else, I mean, I don't know the exact story behind everything. I think we're all open to saying that, but I mean, it's just, it's a problem.
He's held on more than he's dumped early. I think that's safe to say. Got to turn this fan on here. Who do we got next?
We got Paleo. I know character is important, but I'm done with the character on the offensive line. We need bullies on this offensive line, tough, reliable bullies.
Yeah, and Eberflus and Poles, and obviously Flus is gone now, but they talked a lot about character, high character guys, and I think you need most of your locker room to be that. But I think it's also okay to have 3 or 4 kind of rough around the edges type of players, if you will. Like, I think Tyreek Stevenson was kind of that guy early, but when you're not playing well, you can't be that guy. Like, you're willing to live with that if you're one of the best dudes in the league. He's clearly not that right now. But they don't really have a guy in that locker room, Colin, that stands up and is like just taking command of a situation. Jalen did it with the Eberflus thing, but I don't think he wants to be that guy constantly. I put it this way. I talked about this either on this morning show. I can't even remember. The last 2 years, so the team always tweets out the hype videos before the game. You know how Drew Brees used to do those hype things and it's like, well, that makes sense because he's the alpha, he's the quarterback, all that stuff. Caleb's a rookie. I don't really expect that. I don't even think it has to be the quarterback. But you know who's giving the rah-rah speeches before games this year? Kevin Byard, who it's his first year on the team. I get he's a vet, he's known as a leader, all that. I don't have a problem with it, but I would like that to be a guy who's been here for a few years, has grown into that role as a high-level player and leader on this team, not the guy you signed in the offseason.
Right.
I mean, and if it is going to be a guy you signed in the offseason, it needs to be a in their prime, all-pro type of player, like a Max Crosby.
Right.
You know who it was last year? DeMarcus Walker. He's a rotational defensive line.
Yep.
And I'm not saying role players can't be leaders. I would just rather that player ideally be Cole Kmet, Jalen Johnson, people who have grown with this team. And I'm not mad at them for not being that, and those specific guys individually. It would just be nice if you had someone like that.
Yep.
And you don't.
No.
You just don't.
And the thing is, too, and that goes a lot of both ways, because you'll see, players kind of just chit-chat after the play. I mean, obviously, Tyreek Stevenson. Like, if Stevenson was doing that on the opposite side, and again, Stevenson's not the quite level player.
I was cool with it the second half of last year because he was playing awesome.
Yeah.
I like my corners to have a little edginess, but when you're getting your ass kicked and you're getting torched, I don't really want to see it.
And 100%. And it's also like when they're not, doing those certain things to get other guys fired up. Like if it's obviously great. Like if you use that to fire yourself up, cool. But like, why can't, someone also be like, hey, channel that energy into others? Get them to, get a kick in the butt as well. And again, I'm not saying Stevenson should be a leader on this team, but it's also just kind of the mindset too, like a vocal leader.
Yep.
That's something that's needed.
Yeah. It's lacking. Jason, people out here really thinking that Ben Johnson isn't just going to the team that's going to pay him the most. I would push back. I'll give you an example. I do not think he will take the Jets job no matter what. I just don't. Like, I think he's going to be selective. Now, if it comes down to two teams and one team gives him $18 million, the other team gives him $13, yeah, he'll probably take the 18. That's called life.
Right.
But I don't think he will go to a situation that he does not believe in. I think he's made that pretty clear, to be honest, both with turning down opportunities and just with reports we've heard the last 2 years. So now whether he should wield that power, that's another story. But I think he's kind of made it clear, like, well, if the worst case scenario is I just keep calling plays for the Lions, I'm cool with that.
Yeah. And again, I'll be very interested to see, because I think Ben Johnson is going to take the similar route of John Harbaugh. Now, again, I would assume most teams would be willing to have Ben Johnson as their head coach, so we'll see. I'm curious to know if the Bears, let's say they put up, I'm just throwing out numbers here, like $15 million for him, and let's say the Jaguars offer him 18. Does he sit there and kind of evaluate, okay, I've got Trevor Lawrence with this kind of big contract, but they're paying me more. Do I want to go to the Bears who are paying me a lot, but, like, again, not sure about the structure there. Like, it'll be very interesting to see, like, how he conducts his coaching search and what kind of reasons he goes by. And another thing I'll add before you talk, Harry, is, like, last year how he kind of conducted himself during the head coaching process, especially, like, Washington, for example, it rubbed teams the wrong way. So, again, to your point, could that also surface up in interviews again this time around? Something to,
Yeah, I mean, I think some teams with the way he's choosing to operate this, it might be a non-starter. But I think he's kind of just at the point where, again, I think he's comfortable in Detroit. I think he's kind of convinced himself, like, well, if teams don't want to hire me or if I don't like that situation, I'm just going to hang out here. So. And that's pretty rare. I mean, most guys are like, head coach opportunity, please. Like, I'll take it. But I don't think he's going to go into a situation if he thinks it's completely chaotic. And that could be the Bears. Like, the Bears are going to have to sell some of these coaches that they're turning a new leaf here. And that's a tough sell when you've had a reputation for a while like Chicago has. David, Poles has done a pretty good job as far as the roster. I'd keep him. Depends on the truth around the role and keeping Flus. Yeah, I wish we had more clarity there. If he actually wanted him gone and was told, no, I'm good, he doesn't own the team, he works for them. yeah, like if it comes to light that it is crystal clear that Ryan Poles wanted Flus gone after year 2 or even after the Patriots game, it'd be like, you know what? Like, it's not his fault that the Bears have this noble thing where they won't fire a coach midseason until you have historic losses in a row like they did. But I don't know. I look at that press conference. He looked defeated. I think the Flus thing not working out was painful for him because I truly do think he believed in him. So I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know the full story, but I think it's a fair point to make. Dennis, rumor said target for head coach Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, Flores, and Brady. Yeah, that's the list that the same guy who reported the Harbaugh stuff last week. I'm forgetting his name right now. He mentioned those 4. We'll talk about those 4 on a video tomorrow.
Was it Fowler?
No, it's a Chicago guy. Let me see. I like the tweet. Stuff. It was the Dan McNeil guy. Remember last week he had the Jim Harbaugh wanted to be the Bears head coach last year. And there's been conflicting reports on that. But we'll definitely dive into that and take a look at kind of all those candidates in further detail.
Sears Tower from DC Viper. Ario Sanchez is saying Pete Carroll. As a Seahawks fan, you do not want Pete Carroll to be the head coach of this football team. You do not.
Yeah, I just think – yeah, I think he's just – the game's passed him by.
It has.
Now, if you have a first-time head coach and want to bring him in as like a senior advisor or something, I guess. But I just think that, you know, things run their course. Quite frankly, I feel similar about Belichick.
Yeah. I think that's just – to be honest, Pete seems to me at this stage like if he does return to coaching, it'll be at the college level. I just don't see him.
I could see like if Lincoln Riley flames out next year because he's hanging out at USC right now. Pete is.
I could see it.
I could see them just saying, "You want to try and bring us back 5 years and then hand it to someone else." But yeah, I don't think he's an NFL head coach again. DJ Knight, has there been a more overhyped team in the offseason with a more disappointing result than the Bears? I mean, they're definitely near the top of the list. Now, I think like Nick Wright picked him to go to the Super Bowl. That was always crazy, but I mean, as chaotic as it's been, you're some fluky stuff away from being in the playoff picture. So like, I don't think having an expectation of this team being a playoff team was egregious. Now, the division's even better than expected, so we couldn't have necessarily known that, but yeah, I think they're on the short list. I mean, you could say Dallas, but Dak Prescott got hurt. So that's part of that situation. But maybe Cleveland's the other team. But we also kind of knew going into the year that Watson might just be really bad, and he was. So I don't know who else. I know some people were high on the Colts. They're 6-7. It's not like they're completely out of it.
Did you say the Jets? Like the Jets were one.
Jets, yeah.
They had their delusional New York.
I think that hype was stronger last year, though, than it was this year. But there was some hype there still.
Yeah. Like that was one. Bengals.
Atlanta, yeah, Bengals, Atlanta. But the Bears are up there, man.
They're up there.
There's no question.
They were.
There's no question. Sonny, I'm afraid we have the wrong type of character in the locker room. They look around and sound like crash outs and BSers. It's rotten from the core out. I think there's some truth to that. I also think a lot of your key players are under contract. You're not going to start trading Jalen Johnson, DJ Moore, Cole. Like that's why you need a culture setter. Like you need a new voice in there to get these guys back on track. We know these are capable players. They just haven't played like it this year. Players have to take accountability for that. No doubt about it, but you're not just going to start trading your best players. Like you just can't do that. Like it's not. There's cap implications. It sets you back. So yeah, I think you need someone in there to fix the attitude of the team. I really do. Appreciate all the questions. We'll take some more here. We're gonna hop into this mailbag. #Bears or Super Chat. Get your questions answered on the show. #Bears or Super Chat. If you Super Chat, you can jump to the top of the line. We know not everybody can donate, so use #Bears to get your questions in as well. We'll answer a lot of those also. All right, I'm Harrison Graham. Let's dive on in. When will it end? What a username. I'm Harrison Graham. Welcome into Chicago Bears Now. It is mailbag time. He asks, he or she, forget the coaching search for a second. Who do the Bears need to add in free agency? It's hard to forget the coaching search, but I think the one guy that comes to mind, now we'll see if he truly becomes available. I could see the Chiefs trying to lock him up, restructure Mahomes, whatever, to make it happen. But Trey Smith, the Chiefs guard. Now, he's not an all-pro, but he's a really good player. But you're going to have to pay him like an all-pro. There's early chatter that you may have to reset the guard market. So that probably means, I don't know what the highest paid is, but it's low mid-20s per year. I mean, you might have to give him 4 years, close to $100 million, which for a guard, historically, that's kind of crazy. But, I mean, what choice do you have? Your interior is a mess. And you've got a lot of cap space, I think like $80 million. You give Trey Smith north of 20 per year, that's a big penny. But you know what? You got to start building these trenches up and investing real capital into it. So he's kind of the obvious one. There's some other names out there that we'll explore on a future video, but Trey Smith would be the name that comes to mind. Name a player that the Bears should sign in free agency. Let us know in the comment section below if you want Trey Smith, mention him. If there's someone else that's available, drop his name in the comment section. Corey B., it's hard to know whether to want to keep or fire Poles without knowing the exact influence of McCaskey and Warren have had on his decisions, if fired, and hot GM replacement candidates. It would be hard to even come up with a list off the cuff like this, but you would probably look at people who has been around Kevin Warren in the past, maybe when he was in the Vikings organization. Is that someone like Rick Spielman? I don't know. I could come up with a list if this, topic gets some legs. I think right now it's very much in the speculation stage of poll status. If I had to guess right now, I think he'll be back. But I'm with you. I wish we had more information on the McCaskey influence. We know that the McCaskey ownership group has not been good, so I think it's safe to say that there's been some trickle-down effect there. How much? That's unclear. Den of Clips, do you think a full rebuild on defense aside from defensive back is necessary? I don't think it's a full rebuild. I mean, the players, the defense that was good last year, most of those guys are still here. I just think the coverages got stagnant. There's not enough creativity. I think if you get a guy with a more aggressive mindset running the defense, I still think you have good personnel. Now, you got to get better in the trenches, no question. A guy like Tremaine Edmunds hasn't lived up to the contract, but I still think there's pieces to work with there. I think Montez Sweat is just having a down year. He's 27, 28 years old. I think he'll bounce back, but it's definitely not as good as we thought it was, but I still think with a more aggressive coaching mindset and a fresh year, this can still be at least a top 10 unit. Maybe not top 5, but I still think the defense has personnel. Subscribe to the channel. We go live every Monday at 4 o'clock Central, every Thursday at 4 o'clock Central, and every game day over an hour before kickoff. So we're going live all the time, answering your questions, getting you caught up on the latest Bears news and rumors. We also drop new videos literally every single day. We have not gone a day without a new video in, I think, over 2 years. So we're bringing you content all the time. Join us on this journey. Dennis the Chicago Kid, is Joe Brady known as a culture setter? I have no idea. He's 35 years old, but that was probably a question when Sean McVay got hired. That's up to the Bears to figure out when they go through this interview process. Well, really before the interview process, research. What do people in Joe Brady's inner circle say about him? Like, what are characteristics that he brings to the table? I think it's safe to say he knows offense. Obviously, it's easy to work with Josh Allen to an extent, but Josh Allen has also upped his game with Joe Brady. I think that's fair to say. So, he was a big part of that LSU offensive staff, Joe Burrow swears by him. So I think he's got, skins on the wall here, but, being a head coach in a city with a lot of pressure, it's a different ballgame. So, you would have to figure that out. I'm intrigued by Brady. He wouldn't be at the top of my list for some of those question marks, but I think he's someone worth looking into. Phil Dorsett, where do we go from here? Caleb looks like the guy, but other than that, what else do we have to look forward to as fans? I still think there's good talent here. Now, is it as good as we thought? Probably not. I still think there's roster holes, but DJ Moore is 27 years old. Like, he should be good for years to come. Rome Odunze has improved steadily, I would say, throughout the season. Like, he's going to be a talent. Cole Kmet's a good player, probably not having his best year, but he's a good player. Darnell Wright, I think, could be a high level right tackle for years to come. Like, you've got some skill on offense. You got to get better in the trenches. You're probably going to have to add a running back at some point. Defense, I still like a lot of the personnel. I think a new approach and scheme on defense would do wonders. Like, I'm not saying – I don't know who the Brian Flores clone is, but someone who's going to bring exotic blitzes, have a more aggressive mindset, because I think you can cover on the back end if you bring more pressure. So I still like a lot of the personnel, so that would be the hope. But you have some roster holes, probably more than you thought, and clearly the coaching and just the structure of the organization is not even really a question mark. It's I would say it's in the negative category right now. So can you fix that? Can that get fixed? I don't know. That's the tough sell right now. Prize Picks, not easy or not hard to sell Prize Picks, I should say. It's very simple, very fun, very easy to have a chance to make some money here. Get signed up right now, prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS to get a $50 bonus when you play for just $5 initially. And guess what? You can win up to 200 times your money right now with Prize Picks. Merry Picksmas, as we like to say here. Before, the max was winning up to 100 times your money on any given entry. You can now turn $10 into $2,000. That's a pretty good opportunity. Set lineups of 2 or more players, up to 6, and choose more or less on the stat projections provided for you with Prize Picks. Here's a 2-player example. Patrick Mahomes, they're giving you kind of a freebie right now, half a passing yard. You take the more on that for their next game. Brock Purdy, he just cooked the Bears. Feels like maybe the Niners have found their groove again. I'll take the more on his passing yards against the Rams this week. 5 to win 15, but again, you can win 200x your entry right now with certain entries. So get signed up with Prize Picks right now. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Code CLNS is going to give you a $50 bonus when you play for just $5. Get started today. Link is in the comments and in the description. Got time for a few more questions here. Dylan V. Without Nick Bosa, the 49ers got to Caleb 7 times. How much of that do you blame on Caleb versus the offensive line and receivers not getting separation? Without watching the all 22 of every single one of those plays, I'd say it's probably a mixed bag. When Coleman Shelton gets thrown to the ground and you have interior pressure in your grill within 2 seconds, that's not a quarterback sack, in my opinion. Now, when Braxton Jones kind of gets beat but forces the guy back toward the end zone behind Caleb, and Caleb steps up and still gets sacked from behind, like, that's probably on the quarterback. He's got to get rid of it sooner. I thought Caleb had an interesting answer after the game. He was asked about the sacks. He basically said, I think this is a fair answer, but I still think sometimes it's like, well, it still does cost you a little bit. He said when you get sacked on 3rd down, he basically said you can live with those more, because on 3rd down, you're more willing to hold the ball, try to make a play, because whether you get sacked or throw an incompletion, you're punting the ball. Now, I think in certain situations, losing 12 yards and then punting, like, you're probably better off. I think it's case-by-case play, but I kind of was like, you know what, that's actually not the worst answer I've ever heard. And then he also added, 1st and 2nd down sacks kill you, because then you're behind the sticks and it's hard to make that up. But on 3rd down, if you're just punting anyway, now I'm not advocating to just take a sack if someone's not wide open, but I think you're more willing to live with sacks on 3rd downs, which is the point he's making. Now, there's been a couple times earlier in the year especially, and he acknowledged this, if you're at like the 30-yard line in field goal range and you take a 10-yard sack and then you're out of field goal range, well, you can't do that. So I think it's situational based, so I need to go back and look and see how many of those were on 3rd down. But I can live with those a little more, because I'm willing to have my quarterback hold the ball longer and try to extend a drive, rather than, I'll just throw the ball out of bounds and I'm just punting from the 32 instead of my own 25. Like, I can live with that sack a little bit more. Now, you don't want your quarterback taking that many hits, so it's kind of a battle there, but I thought that was an interesting answer and perspective from him. Up-tempo transport, would you consider shutting down Caleb the final month? Not really. Now, if he sprains his ankle or something and he's a game time decision and he could play, but, you know, in that case, maybe you sit him. But, like, I still think there's some value in these games. Now, I also think this locker room and team is such a mess right now that you could argue you'd be better off if this season just ended. But as long as there's games on the schedule, you still have divisional games. That's something to play for. You could play spoiler a little bit here. So, if you can't get up for the Packers game in Week 18, you need to check yourself. So I'm sure he wants to keep playing. I don't think you shut him down. I think you keep letting it rip and keep playing. Now, I would like to have a more aggressive mindset, and that's something Thomas Brown talked about on Monday. We got to find a way to generate more explosive plays. So we'll see if they take some more downfield shots this week, but I'm not really there in terms of shutting him down for preservation at this point. Will the Bears win another game this year? I mean, I would probably say no. You've got your best chance, ironically, could be the Packers Week 18 because there could be a situation where they're resting starters. But Lions, you're going to be a heavy dog, even at home. Vikings on the road, you're a heavy dog. Seattle's going to have a lot to play for when they come to town. They're a playoff team right now. So I would probably say no, unfortunately. But let us know what you guys think. Y for yes or N for no. Ethan Gray, when do we have our conversation about the struggles of DJ? The effort and ability to get separation this year has been lousy. Yeah, I don't think he's had his best year. I think he's picked it up since Thomas took over the play calling, but yeah, I can't sit here and act like the effort has been top-notch every single game, every single snap. I still like DJ as a player. I still think he's a good player, but I do think some self-reflection this offseason is going to be needed. I think a new coach is going to need to kind of re-engage him a little bit more, but I'm not punting on DJ, but it's fair to be critical because this has not been his best season. And effort, especially earlier in the year, was very questionable, no doubt about it. All right, more questions can be asked to me on social media at HGramNFL, both on Twitter and on Instagram. Hit your boy up. DMs are wide open. Still got to catch up on DMs from after the 49ers game, but we'll get to those soon. All right, DeJounte Perkins, watch Poles hire his buddy Matt Ryan as head coach. I don't think that's happening. Complete the trifecta of Matt and Ryan head coach GM combos with a guy literally named Matt Ryan. It's destiny. I think Matt Ryan is enjoying sitting in the booth for CBS and making a lot of money. It's a very cushy job. He strikes me more of the front office type, and if Poles wanted to bring him in as like an advisor, I could see something like that, but I am very confident in saying Matt Ryan will not be the next Bears head coach. I mean, he's never coached before, so
I agree.
I do not think. And by the way, that has not even been mentioned by anyone other than DeJounte from what I've seen. So it is funny though. Matt Nagy, Ryan Pace, Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles, Matt Ryan. That would be kind of funny, but yeah, that's not going to happen. Someone's spamming Trubisky in the chat. Why? He's not even a good backup anymore, guys.
Trubisky is a goot. Again, feel free to say whatever in the chat, but if you do keep spamming, put you in a brief timeout.
Yeah. D1, are you like Mitch's dad or something? Or is he your dad? I don't even know if Mitch has kids.
He goes, oh no. That's funny. I really do think that the Bears, they'll get at least one. I do think it'd be hard for me to see them lose this many games in a row consecutively to end the year because they're still trying.
They'll just run into one.
Some team will have an off day, or like they'll just come out with a random just boost of energy. But it's looking closer to being 0-5 than it is, even 2-2.
Look, the odds would say they're likely to win one game here, but the odds would have been heavily in your favor of winning even multiple games coming out of the bye. You haven't won one yet. You've lost 7 in a row. What's 4 more?
Cullen forgot the 22 season. It's a fair point.
Cullen didn't experience that like we did. You know what's funny? The 22 season ended on a 10-game losing streak. And that was in year 1 of the rebuild. You had completely torn down the roster. The fact that this could top that, losing 11 in a row to end a season, is kind of remarkable. It really is. Brian is also remarkable.
That he is.
Shout out to Brian.
Shout out indeed to our brother from Steel Land, because it is
Brian Bear to Steel Land. Boom! To be honest, what is the benefit of winning another game? It appears the players have given up. Circular finger pointing at the moment. Yeah, I think I hear you, and like, look, is the franchise potentially better off getting the highest pick? I guess, but like, a lot of your key players, all they've done is lose. Like, at some point, there's value in winning. So I'm kind of like indifferent at this point. I'm not going to cheer for losses. Toward the end of 22, the last couple weeks, you're like, okay, what's 2 more losses? We have a chance at the number 1 pick here, which could drastically alter the franchise. Like, that's a little different.
It was.
You're not getting, like, you're in year 3 with this, like, regime. I know the head coach is gone. It's like, look, if it's kind of one of those, Colin, if you lose out, hey, cool. Like, I'm not, like, against it at this point. But, like, like Marshall on Giants the other day celebrated the loss. I get that. I've kind of been there. Like, you need a quarterback. Like, the Bears don't need that anymore. Like, whether or not Caleb works out as a high level, there's zero scenario where they're drafting a QB this year. So, like, to cheer for losses, I just, again, if it happens, it happens. Like, I've accepted that if it happens, like, it's not the worst thing at this point because you're completely out of it, but I still think there's value in your young quarterback and these pieces he's going to be playing with finding a way to win some games. Like, I just do. So, we'll see what happens, but
yeah.
That was 2022, man. Like,
it's true.
That's
Very
when you have no players. You're like, these guys aren't going to be here. So, yeah, like, if they lose, that's probably a good thing. But now you've got a lot of guys that are going to be here, Colin. A lot of guys that have lost a lot. Like, they need to learn how to win.
They do. And, that was one of your big takeaways from, next Bears head coach needs to have this checked. You need to know how to win.
Yep. All right, speaking of the organization, Ryan Poles, what does his future look like? Is he the answer? Is he not? What direction do you go in? We'll dive into that. We'll get to this super chat real quick first from Hunter, and then we'll do that. Hunter says, someone needs to find a way to frame Poles for stealing the lawn equipment from Soldier Field last year so George will actually fire him. That's really funny. I'm not anti-Poles. We're going to get into him here. I think he's done some good things. I think he's done some not so good things. I wish we had a clearer picture on Eberflus. I do think he was pretty loyal to him, though, which that's a red flag. Let's dive into it. Ryan Poles. Should they fire him? Should they keep him? Let's discuss. Bears fans, I think it's time to have a Ryan Poles conversation. Things have not gone well. It's year 3. This team's regressed. Should he be the guy moving forward? We dive into it next here on Chicago Bears Now. I'm Harrison Graham. Is Ryan Poles on the hot seat as the Bears GM? That is what we're going to discuss. Should he be on the hot seat? Kevin Warren has come out and said he's the GM. He's going to be here, but should he be? Is it a fair discussion to have at this point? I would say it's at least fair to dip your toes in these waters based on the regression of this team this year. And then a couple of other notes and reasons to discuss as well, including this from Adam Johns, Bears reporter for The Athletic, says, this came up on the podcast, Hogan Johns, so I'll add it here. Matt Eberflus got a 5-year contract. Ryan Poles has a 4-year deal, which that's silly to begin with. Why did they not have the same length contract? But that's a different story. The Bears signed Ryan Pace to an extension before he started his head coach that ended up with Matt Nagy. To my knowledge, Poles has not been extended yet. So that tells me a few things. One, have they fully committed to him yet? Even though Kevin Warren says they have? But then these two options, I think, are pretty clear ones. Because if he has a 4-year deal, if that's accurate reporting from Johns, which I assume is, that means he's entering a contract year this year. I don't think you can have him be a lame duck GM. I think you have two options. One, you extend him for either 3 or 4 years, and then you give the head coach that you hire a 4 or 5 year deal to line up with Poles' contract, because 1 plus 3 or 4 for Poles would be 4 or 5 year deal, and then you either do a 4 or 5 year deal with the new head coach based on what Poles' contract is. Or 2, you fire Poles and you bring him a new GM to align with the new head coach. I think it's that simple. You cannot go into a season with the lame duck GM. Why? First of all, you're probably going to narrow your head coaching search because they're going to be like, hey, what's the deal with Poles? What's his contract? Yeah, he's got 1 more year left. I'm not interested, because a head coach doesn't want to enter a situation, GM on a 1-year deal, and then a year from now, for whatever reason, they don't want to extend Poles. They let him go. Then it's a whole new GM, whole new relationship you have to build. Coaches don't like that. They don't want that. So it's those two options. You either extend him or you fire him. It really is that simple. You guys make the call. Should the Bears fire Ryan Poles? Type F for fire him or type K for keep him. I don't think you can do option 3, which is just let him play the 4th year of his contract. If he had 2 years left, if it was a 5-year deal like it was with the Eberflus, slightly different story. I don't think you can do it with the way you've got it structured right now. I thought Ben Devine had an interesting note on Twitter. These were 4 quotes from Ryan Poles' introductory press conference. Number 1, our philosophy will be building this team through the trenches. Trenches not built. Fair to say. I mean, they've made some investment there. Trenches have a long way to go. Number 2, we will focus on building a winning culture. You have not won. You're 14-33 with this team as a GM. Number 3, I believe in Matt Eberflus. He's the right coach for this team. You had to fire him in year 3. Probably should have fired him after year 2. Number 4, we will take the NFC North, and never give it back. For a 3rd straight year, you're dead last in the NFC North. So it is kind of interesting that, like, his political slogan, whatever you want to call it, this is my philosophy, this is what we're going to do. You've done none of it. None of it has happened. Now, that doesn't mean he hasn't done some good things. We're going to get to that part. But trenches are built. You are a winning team. The culture sucks, what you talked about. Matt Eberflus was not the answer. Not only was he not the answer, he's one of the worst coaches in franchise history, and I would say modern NFL history, and you've been the laughingstock of the NFC North. Now, year 1, you're completely rebuilding, understandable. Even last year, you won 7 games. I was like, that's pretty decent growth, actually, even though you blew 3 games in crazy fashion. This year, at best, you'll go 8-9. Does anybody think they're winning 4 games in a row? You're more likely to go 4-13. That's not good, man. That is not good. And I was kind of posing this as well on Sunday, watching the Bears just get drubbed by the San Francisco 49ers. How many players on this roster that were here last year and are here now actually improved from 2023 to 2024? Let's just talk about some key players. Jalen Johnson. I would still say he's a good player, and I believe he's a great talent and will be a great player moving forward. It is completely objective to say he's had a worse year this year. DJ Moore, same boat. I'm not too worried about those guys' futures, but this year they've taken a step back. Cole Kmet, I would say it's safe to say, has not been as good this year. Untimely penalties, has a few drops as well. Who else? TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmunds. Tremaine wasn't that good last year either. I would say both have regressed. Montez Sweat. I think he's had a foot issue, but regardless of the reason, he's regressed. Tyreek Stevenson. By the end of last year, he was playing at a fringe Pro Bowl level. He's not even playing at a starting level right now. That's a guy you took in the 2nd round a couple years ago. A guy that you brought in to be a high-level player. I would say Gervon Dexter, Kyler Gordon, and Darnell Wright have improved. Beyond that, who's improved? A key player that was here last year to this year, who has improved beyond those guys? When more guys have regressed and improved, and now I'm not saying that's all on the GM. The GM brings in the talent, and then the coaches develop, and the players carry weight too on him, just challenging themselves, working on their craft, all that stuff. Like, it's not 100% Poles' problem, but like, how many of these young players he's brought in have just taken off? Like, even Dexter and Wright, good players. Gervon Dexter's not an all-pro. I don't expect him to be right now. Darnell Wright's a good right tackle. He's not an all-pro. Like, you have a lot of good-ish players, but a lot of those good-ish players are regressing, and that is a major, major concern. We got a question on our live show on Monday. Who is the best non-special teams player on the team this year? Who's had the best year? I said, I guess, Darnell Wright. Like, it was a tough question to answer. Who has been the best non-special teams player this year? It really got me thinking. It's like, well, that's a bit of a concern. The point is, we may have overvalued the talent that Poles has brought in. Now, I think the coaching carries a lot of blame. I don't think the staff is that good. Fair enough. But it's not like Poles has hit on every move either. I think that's very fair to say. So let's kind of get into the pros and cons of Ryan Poles coming up next. Good moves he's made, because he certainly has made plenty. Bad moves he's made that are objectively bad, regardless of the coaching. And, at the end of the video, I'll kind of give my final take on whether or not this is the guy that you should be moving forward with as your general manager. But before we do all of that, I do want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Game Time. Best place to get tickets is Game Time for a Bears game, a Bulls game, Blackhawks, any other sporting event, concert, comedy show. Their feature Game Time picks is awesome. You kind of toggle that box, and you're going to be able to narrow down your search, because a lot of these stadiums, they got 20,000 tickets you're scrolling through. Well, with Game Time Picks, it'll kind of show you different price points at the venue. Kind of, here's third level, here's 50-yard line, here's second level, corner of the end zone, whatever the case may be. And you're like, okay, that's in my price range. That's not very easy to kind of narrow down your search. And then you, when you settle on your price range, you can kind of scroll through the tickets in that range. Say, okay, this is the view from the seat that I'm looking for, which they have for you. You can see all the vantage points. Sometimes they offer super deals on Prize Picks, which you'll get a discounted price on certain tickets, best bang for your buck. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Good example of that, my buddy went to the Big 12 championship game. Actually, producer Jack, you guys know him well. He bought tickets a week out in advance for $100. By the time game day got there, those same tickets in that section were like $48. So sometimes you wait till the very end and you get the best price available. So here's what you need to do. Create an account today. Use code ChatSports. Get $20 off your first purchase only. Terms apply. What time is it? It's game time. Use code ChatSports. $20 off. Okay, Poles' good moves. He did a good job cleaning up the Bears cap situation when he first got here. A lot of bad contracts. He cut some guys. He traded some guys. You could argue maybe Roquan Smith should have been traded. We'll get into that in a second. But he did a good job. He invested a bad cap situation. Ryan Pace had a lot of bad contracts, trying to keep that window open from 2018, still in 2021, when a lot of those players were over the hill. Ryan Poles cleaned that up. Number two, the trade with the Carolina Panthers. Look, we'll see how it ultimately ages, but I think at minimum it was a good trade. Has a chance to be an awesome trade. We'll see how it plays out. But the trade resulted in DJ Moore, who's been a good player, not as good this year, good player though. Darnell Wright, good player, I'd say he's ascending. Tyreek Stevenson, we'll see. Obviously this year has not been ideal. Caleb Williams, who I'm a big believer in. And you still have a second-round pick next year. I think even on the worst end, that was still a good trade. Now, will it be as awesome as we thought it could have been at the time? Who knows? That remains to be seen. But I think it's fair to say that was a good trade by Ryan Poles. Do you want more Bears content? Are you looking for more Chicago Bears videos to keep you entertained, even though things are just dicey right now? Well, we're here. Good news, bad news, troubling news, awesome news, every single day, reacting to the top storylines out there. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications. We are the channel for you. Number three, he did draft Caleb Williams, and I know there's still a small percentage of the fan base who does not think this was a good move, but I think even with the ups and downs, with the chaos of the franchise, he's still done some good things. I mean, these are not bad numbers at all. And it's not all about the numbers, but this is a guy who's proven when the game's on the line, he can deliver and give you a chance to win. Obviously, circumstances, coach, whatever the case may be, has let you down in some of those late game situations, getting a field goal block, all that stuff. But he's shown that he can be a high-level player with the game on the line. Now, you need more consistency. He's got to start these games out better. But I firmly believe drafting Caleb and trading Justin Fields was the right move. I just do. He's a much better and polished passer as a rookie than Justin ever was. You see the high-level plays. It's inconsistent. It's not fully there. It's going to take some time. But I do think that was the right move. Now, kind of lucked into that pick from Carolina, no doubt about it. But I still think executing that move was the right one. Montez Sweat trade. Again, kind of like DJ, having a down year, but that was a good move. Second round pick for a guy who instantly became your best defensive lineman, I think is a high-level player. Now, is he a number one on a dominant defensive line? He's probably more of a two, but I still think that was a good move. He could set the edge in the run. I think you got to get him re-engaged next year. I think he's been really frustrated with the losing and with how the injury stuff was going earlier in the year. He had that foot thing that kept flaring up, but I still like that move overall. Maybe it ages poorly, but I still feel okay about that one. What do you guys think has been Ryan Poles' best move? And before we get to the cons, I do want to say, back to the first point of cleaning up the books and the salary cap, that's the easy part. A lot of people can come in and, take a roster down to the studs, clear up the cap. Oh, King Poles. I'm not trying to dump on the guy, but that's the easy part. Building it back up is the hard part. And he's done some good, but he's also done some bad. Let's get to some of those moves. Clearly the Claypool one. And listen, I didn't give him a pass, but I kind of was like, you know what? He's trying to take a swing. He wanted to give Justin Fields another weapon, see if Fields give him as fair of a shake as possible. Didn't work out. No harm, no foul. But that was a tough one. That ended up being the 33rd pick for a player who gave you nothing. That's a pretty tough one on Ryan Poles' resume. I didn't even mention it on here, but he drafted Velus Jones and kept him too long too. That not great, if we're being completely honest. 2 and 3 are a two-parter. Trading Roquan Smith, paying Tremaine Edmunds. In a vacuum, I did not hate trading Roquan. I wasn't for it. I wanted to pay him and keep him. We talked on another video. You don't really have a player that can be a high level tone setter in the locker room. I think Roquan could have continued to grow into that guy. I don't know if he was fully there yet, but I think he could have been that. He's clearly a far better player than Tremaine Edmunds, but it's like off-ball linebacker. Maybe he's just a better 3-4 scheme player. Flus is running a 4-3. It's like, okay, I can live with it. It's not like you traded prime Brian Urlacher. But the issue I have is that you trade Roquan, who's much better than Tremaine Edmunds, and then you pay Tremaine $18 a year when you didn't want to play Roquan $20 a year. It's like, wait a second. You kind of told us we don't think Roquan's worth $20 a year, which I kind of read that as, well, off-ball linebacker. It's probably just a philosophy thing. A lot of teams don't want to pay linebackers that much. But then you pay Tremaine $18 because he has a better athletic profile? That's not good. Tremaine Edmunds can't sniff Roquan's jock. It is not even close between those two players. So that was a pretty egregious, I have no problem paying Roquan if you want to use that money for, Trench's help. No, we're going to pay half the player 90% of the contract. That was just a bad move, period, point blank. Okay, number 4. Just not enough resources to the offensive line. Quite frankly, the defensive line too, but I'm more focused about the offensive line because Justin Fields didn't play behind a good enough offensive line. Caleb Williams is not playing behind a good enough offensive line right now. You've made 2 notable splashes. And Nate Davis, good player in Tennessee, but it's not like you signed a top 10 guard. Now, is it Ryan Poles' fault that Nate Davis decided I don't like football anymore? I don't know, but he did have a bit of a reputation in Tennessee that he did not like to practice, and there was early chatter that Vrabel hated him. That should have been a red flag, and if they didn't know that, they didn't do enough homework. Darnell Wright's been pretty good. You took him number 10 overall. But that's it. Every other offensive line move has been day 3 of the draft, except for Kron Amagaji in the 3rd round, who's given you nothing. He's been hurt most of his rookie year. Or it's been patchwork pieces. Lucas Patrick, Ryan Bates, Matt Pryor, Braxton Jones in the 5th round was a good value pick, but he's not a star. He's a serviceable left tackle, but that's kind of it. Tevin Jenkins, who's been arguably the best offensive lineman when healthy, you didn't draft Tevin, right? Just not enough investment there. Not enough investment on the offensive line for the last quarterback or for the quarterback you currently have. So you've got that. And then perhaps the most important, and again, we don't know everything about it. How much was he shifted toward Eberflus? How much did the agent play a role? Yada, yada, yada. We've heard all the angles. I think at minimum he really liked Matt Eberflus and he thought he could be the guy. For how long, that's unclear. But it's pretty clear he was overly loyal to Matt Eberflus. And I think you got to toe that line in this industry. You want to have your guys' backs. You want the GM head coach combination to really believe in each other. All the good teams right now, they have that. But you have to establish a winning culture to really have that gel. You can't be like, yo, Flus is my guy, and 2.5 years in, you've got a 14-30 record, and still be like, yo, Flus is my guy. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe he may like the guy, but he's not our guy, if that makes sense. He's not the answer for this franchise. So to bring him back for 24 was insane. Again, I don't know if Poles wanted him out or not. We've heard angles that he did. We've heard angles that he didn't. Who knows what's true at this point? Somewhere in the middle is probably the case. I think he was at least open-minded to bringing him back. I know when they held that presser after firing Getsy and with Flus up there, he was like, Matt's my guy. I believe in him. So I guess he could have been blowing smoke up our ass, but I think it's fair to say that Ryan Poles really liked Matt Eberflus, and I get it. You like the guy, you believe in him, you like some of his characteristics. Bottom line is the guy's a loser. I mean, as a head coach, I don't know what to tell you. And it was pretty clear 2 seasons in, but he did not seem to think that was the case. And we saw how that played out this year before he got fired. So you add it all up. What say you? Especially when you consider his contract situation and the fact that you want to get the best head coach possible, and you may not be able to do that with the lame duck GM. Would you fire him or would you keep him and extend him? Because, again, I think that's what you're going to have to do if you do keep him. Look, I like Ryan Poles. I still think he's built the roster at least decently well. The tear down was executed much better than the build-up has been up to this point, but I still think there's been good moves. I'm kind of at this point where it's like, I'm cool either way. I'm not going to go out of my way saying, you have to keep this guy. But I'm also not going to say, you have to fire him, no choice. Because I do think he's done pretty well. I do think there are characteristics about him as a GM that I like. He has a good balance of not mortgaging the future, but also being, timely aggressive with some of the trades he's made. But the bottom line is this team hasn't won enough. And, that has to fall on the GM, too. It can't just be on the coach. So I'm indifferent. If I woke up tomorrow and they fired him, I'd be like, that sucks, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. If I woke up tomorrow and there was an extension and he was going to be a focal point in choosing the new head coach, be like, I'm cool with that too. So that's where I'm at. You guys let me know where you're at in the comment section below. My name is Harrison Graham. Our Bears content ain't going anywhere. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. That's the beauty of this channel. We're going to continue to keep rocking and rolling here on Chicago Bears Now. All right. TJ says, do you shut players down to reduce injury risk? I mean, if guys are banged up, sure. But if guys are healthy, I'm playing this thing out. Mm-hmm. Players want to play. They want to put good tape out there. Guys that are going to be here for the future, you want to make sure that you've got their back and all that stuff. So, yeah, I'm not shutting guys down. Again, like I said it earlier when someone asked about Caleb calling. If Caleb sprains his ankle and is a game-time decision, probably sit him for that game. But if he can go, if these guys can play, they need to play. Yep. They haven't earned the right to not play, to be completely honest. So, I'm trotting these guys out there still. That's where I'm at. Now, you could argue, should you play some young guys? Like Tyler Scott. Why not play Tyler Scott some? The season's over. Let's see what the kid can do. Start Terrell Smith. Give him a full game or two as the number 2 outside guy. I think you can explore and try some different players, but I don't think it's like, hey, Jalen, we've invested a lot of money in you. We're just going to shut you down even though you're healthy. You got 4 games left, man. This isn't the NBA where it's like 82 games. You want to sit the final 5, the season's over, so be it. That's just not the NFL.
Which I don't necessarily always agree with that anyway.
No, I don't either. But in that case, you kind of get it. Yeah, we're 20-55. We're just going to call it. You only got 17 of these, man. I'm putting my guys out there. All right.
Last thing I'll say on the polls thing, I was kind of more team polls at the beginning of the season, and as the season's kind of worn on, you've kind of seen the holes in this Bears roster and kind of seen some of the cracks and everything. Ultimately, if you think that there's a question of whether or not you should keep him, like the fact that we're asking this means probably you don't have the guy.
Yeah.
More often than not. So
it's like this goes back to the Justin Fields after year 3. It's like, if you still don't know, you probably know.
Exactly.
Now, there are exceptions. You're seeing it with, guys like Geno and Baker, Sam Darnold. Guys resurrect. Guys get a second chance as a head coach or a GM. Maybe it works out better that time, but it's fair. Now, what makes me nervous, Colin, they fire Poles. Is Kevin Warren alone picking a GM and a head coach? Like, you would have to get a search firm, I would think, to help. Like, there's just no way. So I don't think they'll fire him. And again, I'm not saying they even should. I'm on the fence, to be honest. Now, if these drubbings continue the rest of the way and some of this talent he's brought in is just fading, maybe I shift toward moving on. I see arguments on both sides, which is why I made arguments on both sides. But, like, it's not clear-cut like Eberflus, in my opinion. But, yeah, the worry is, for me, Colin, is more so, well, if you do, then what? Like, who's bringing in? Because when they've had to bring in a head coach and a GM, it has not gone well. I just.
It's a fair point.
It makes me nervous. One thing we don't know, this is from Mike, appreciate the super chat, is if the McCaskies forced Ryan Poles to keep Flus. Yeah, we don't know that, which is incredibly frustrating. Like, it would be really nice if someone could get to the bottom of that. At least more information. Because you've literally heard reports, Colin, on both sides. So that makes me think, like, opposite sides camps have leaked certain things. Like, one camp, yeah, Poles, like Poles' agent or whatever. Or, well, that wouldn't make sense because same agent as Flus. But someone in Poles' circle leaked it to the media. Yeah, the Bears didn't let Poles fire Matt Eberflus after year 2 because it was a 5-year contract. They thought it was too soon. But then you've heard other reports of Kevin Warren wanted to fire Flus, but he let Poles make that call. It's just like, I don't know what to believe. I have no idea.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Someone in the chat, Justin has more talent. I would push back strongly, and I do think Justin has a lot of raw talent. But I still think Caleb has more. Justin's a better athlete, but Caleb's got a stronger arm, especially like with the intermediate game. But again, like I said, I'm retired from the Justin talk. It's pointless.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. But like, even if like just as football fans, we debate this stuff all the time. Like, there's no point.
None.
There's no scenario where he's coming back. Like, I don't think he would want to come back, guys. Like, it's over. I love debate. That's why we do this.
Yep.
Like, that's literally the point. And like, we do videos on, like, we did videos of trading for Kyle Shanahan. That's a less than 0.01% chance. We get into the speculation game. But like, there's nothing to gain from the Justin Caleb thing anymore.
There's also
now, if Caleb's gone in 3 years and we want to revisit, should they have kept Justin because they're both gone? Like, that could be a fun debate. But like, that's not where we're at.
It's also like, what else could we talk about that subject? Like, in terms of new information.
Yeah, like, the debates we're having now aren't any different than, like, I guess Caleb's played some games now, but I would say if anything, that should be closer to ending the discussions. Like, he's been a better player. Doesn't mean he's been awesome, but he's been better. Like,
yep.
So I don't get it. But I also understand that when you lose this many games in a row, you're looking for reasons. You're grasping at straws. Like, I get it. Like, I wake up every day and I'm like, God, the Bears are a joke. I asked my wife. She's like, after every game, I get a text. Sorry, after they lose, because she knows I care about this shit. So, all right, we got to get out of here. Good show. Thanks for all the super chats, all the comments, all the likes, new subscribers, all that stuff. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to have an episode about that report of 4 coaches that the Bears apparently really want to look into. So stay tuned for that. Busy week ahead, as always, here on Chicago Bears Now. Bear down.